Hi everyone, Amber here from Sew Majestic, and today we are sewing up my newest pattern, the Addy Shoulder Bag. So this is the one that I make in the video. It has a front vertical pocket that goes all the way through and even onto this side. The bottom has this nice top stitching. I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more in the pattern because you could leave this part out. It makes it a little bit difficult to top stitch along the zipper. On the back side, it has a slip pocket, and I have it divided down the center. And I am using it with a shoulder strap, and I still put strap ends on and a snap hook so I can make it removable if I ever wanted to turn this into a crossbody. On the inside, there is also a zipper pocket and a slip pocket. And something that's unique about this bag and my winter crescent bag, it does not have a gusset, but it still has our tabs on the side and a full zipper closure. So I would say the two hardest things are if you choose to top stitch the bottom like this, it makes it very difficult to top stitch one of the top sides. Kathy actually said it was like sewing in a long dark tunnel. So if you are intimidated, you could leave that part off. And then the other thing is inserting the strap connectors on the side that has our zipper tab. So those are just a little bit to be mindful of. I'll have timestamps through. You can jump ahead and see if this is something that you think your machine could handle or that you feel up to, because those could cause some problems. And I'll show you, this one was made all out of vinyl, and I just have it interfaced, like the accent pieces, with Sewfuse Plus. This is the one that is in the written instructions. This one has the Decoville light, which I recommend, behind the bottom and top accent pieces and the main panels here. And I have done this one out of vinyl using fleece, fusible fleece for the bottom and the top and the behind the accent pieces. And these are all cotton woven. So you can make it in a variety of materials. I would say it's an intermediate bag. I do call it the shoulder bag because you can see that it sits, and I like where my elbow can rest over it. So I do show you a method, or if you look at the pattern page 17, how you can measure to find a strap that fits appropriately for you. And so for this one, I have used webbing and vinyl to make two-tone, and this one I did it with water resistant canvas and vinyl, and this one was all cotton woven. So there is a lot of options. Please feel free to join any of my social media groups. I have a Facebook group, Instagram or TikTok. Ask any questions. I love engagement. Feel free to post photos. There are timestamps in the description, as well as a coupon code if you want to purchase the pattern. It's actually valid for any of my patterns in the shop. And I hope that if you like the video, you'll consider giving it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel, because all that does help my channel grow. So enjoy! So I have all my pieces laid out. For my exterior, I am using this smooth vinyl that's available in the shop. It is backed with a canvas. So it does give it a little bit of structure. It sews fine on my domestic when I use a Teflon foot. So this will be my exterior, and I'm not interfacing it. If you think your vinyls need structure, or you're using a cotton especially, then you definitely want to interface according to the pattern. And then all my linings are water resistant canvas with the PVC backing. This is the Pro Tough from Walmart. So also with these, I am not interfacing. So this is going to be our front pocket, the left-hand side. And then I have this piece here, which will be the right-hand side, and the zipper will go between it. So that also has a lining and an exterior. And the reason why I'm showing you this first is because this is where it can be confusing. In the pattern, it says you need 2 piece A's, one your exterior. So my vinyl here is going to be the exterior. And I did not interface this piece because it's going to have more over it that gives it structure, and a lining piece. So why you need a lining is this lining piece is actually the back to these 2 pieces here. So when we make our front zipper pocket, this piece A behind it becomes the lining. So that's why I'm just really showing it, because some people, when they were testing, didn't realize that, and you don't want to waste like really pretty fabric if it's just going to be your lining. So with that being said, this is our other piece A, which is the main panel for the other side. I'm using this dark green because I'm using the frogs for my exterior slip pocket. So again, I have an exterior fabric, which is the vinyl, and the lining of the slip pocket. So that is going to be centered on this green A piece. So I decided to do just plain green, because if I did frogs, you're not going to see them, only on the edges right here. So those are our exteriors with the pockets. So we have 2 of our bottom exterior accent pieces. These I do recommend Decoville in the pattern. This vinyl is a little bit sturdy, so I only put some Sew Fuse Plus. If you want it more structured, definitely use the Decoville or something more sturdy. So these are the bottom. And the same thing for the top exterior pieces. I also put a layer of Sew Fuse Plus, but if you need even more structure, definitely use the Decoville. Okay, and now we have 2 lining pieces. Again, I'm using waterproof canvas, so I'm not interfacing. And then for the inside, we have our zipper overlay and 2 lining pieces for the interior zipper pocket. We have our slip pocket and lining. I chose to do the vinyl for this, so I have cut out a slip pocket overlay, which would go over the top, like the trim. But because I'm doing vinyl, I probably won't end up using this. But I definitely recommend this if you have like floppier material, like waterproof canvas, or you're not using vinyl. So that will be the slip pocket inside. You also need a zipper tab. This can be kind of thick. I'm using vinyl, so I'm only going to fold it once. So if you do the 4-fold method, like the pattern is written, that is for if you're using like cotton or waterproof canvas. If you're doing vinyl, I only recommend a 1-fold because when we turn the bag, that can make it difficult. So for the strap, I have 1 piece of vinyl cut out because we fold this to our centers and make a strap that has like an accent. So for the back side, instead of using water resistant canvas or another piece of fabric, I am going to use webbing. So that will be the accent on the back side. And I'm also using webbing for my D-ring connectors. If you are using the 4-fold method, you definitely want to use like water resistant canvas, something thin, because where the D-ring connectors can go in can get very thick. So you do not want to use anything thick in that material, or thick material in that area. Instead of D-rings, I am using square rings. So I have 2 square rings, 2 snap hooks, and 4 strap ends that match. I'm using all rose gold. And then I also have zipper tape. I have not cut it down yet to the individual pieces, and 3 zipper pulls. So that is what I need. I also might put rivets. Not 100% sure yet. I'm going to see how thick it is once I get going. So that's what I'm using for this video. I have made this with all cotton woven. I've made it with water resistant canvas and vinyl. So definitely feel free to mix and match your materials and stabilizers. And please feel free to post questions in the comments or join one of my social media groups if on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, any of those if you have questions. There's lots of helpful information there. And one more thing that I forgot to mention about the strap, I would wait to cut this piece until your bag is done. If you look at page 17 of the pattern, I show a way that you can measure the length that you need, and I will also show it in the video. So this is cut to where I like my bag to fall, but you might want it longer or shorter based on your preferences. Okay, so as far as tools, I have a bunch of clips. I'm going to use this Tex 35 green thread from Wizardry Stitchery. It's my favorite thread. Tex 35 works perfect on my domestic. I'm using Microtex 9014 needles. I have a chalk marker, silver marker, a water soluble one. Depending on what I'm doing, those are my 3 favorite things to use. I have a seam ripper stiletto combo, lighter, double-sided tape, snips, and I have a hole punch and rivets here in case I decide to put them in. And if there's anything else that I think of as I am going, I will let you know. All right, so we are starting with our pattern piece C's, which are the pocket for the exterior and the lining. So we're going to start with the lining, and you need one of your smaller pieces of zipper tape. And you could put your pull on after, but I just prefer to put it on now. That way I don't forget. And I put the right side on first because I'm right-handed, then the left side, and I kind of straighten it out and then push down. Oh, that got a little bit of a bubble. My right-hand side was too far. So I tried to straighten them out before I push down. Try this one. All right, much better. So I want my zipper pull facing up, and I cut my zipper tape just slightly longer, you can see, just to give me some wiggle room. So the zipper is going to be vertical, so I want to make sure that my zipper pull is facing up. And then I'm just going to clip it into place and base stitch it at the machine. One thing that I do is as I am clipping this, I move my pull out of the way. So I found that if you do not do that, even while you're clipping, you can get a bubble in your zipper tape. Okay, so then I'm going to take that to the machine and just top stitch along the left. And so your fabric, your lining fabric should be right side facing up, and your zipper teeth should be right side facing up. Okay, so we have just basted on our zipper. In the video, you'll notice that I lift my presser foot and move my pull out of the way as I'm going down. That will also avoid the bubble. So we want to do the same thing when we now attach to this next piece. So we have our exterior piece C, right side facing up. If you are using a directional print, make sure you pay attention to that. And we are going to put it right sides together, sandwiching our zipper between. So again, I'm moving my pull out of the way as I'm clipping, and I'm going to do the same thing while I sew. And this time you are going to sew at your regular seam allowance, and you probably want to use a zipper foot. I'll be using a zipper foot so I can do my full seam allowance along here on the left hand side. And you want to make sure that you're backstitching in the beginning and the end for all steps to make sure that our thread is secured. All right, so the next step I'm going to show you here, we have just stitched at the given seam allowance along the zipper on the left hand side. So now I am going to fold this open so that our exterior and our lining are wrong sides together. If you are using like a cotton woven, I definitely recommend maybe ironing it to really settle that crease. Because I'm using vinyl and water resistant or waterproof canvas, I'm just kind of tugging and making sure it's as folded back as possible. And then we are going to top stitch along the left hand side here. And if you'll notice, I switched out to a Teflon foot. Anytime that I am top stitching or sewing the vinyl with the smooth side up, or if I'm sewing on the PVC side of water resistant canvas, I use my Teflon foot. And I also have it at the largest stitch length for top stitching. All right, so now that is top stitch. Sometimes my machine gives me a little bit of trouble in the beginning and I have to help it get started. But once it does, that Teflon foot really helps keep a smooth, even stitch on my domestic when I use vinyl. Okay, so now we have our left-hand side of our exterior pocket. So now we need to add the right-hand side. These are pattern piece D, so the exterior and the lining. So again, we're going to start with the lining. We're going to do the same exact thing that we did for piece C. We are going to line up the zipper tape on the right hand side, and I'm just making sure that my exterior matches the top and the bottom, and then clip that in place. And again, I'm going to move my pull as I'm clipping. And we are going to take this to the machine and baste stitch in place the zipper. Okay, so we have just base stitched along our zipper on the right hand side. So we need our exterior piece D, and we are putting it right side together. So if you have, again, a print, make sure it's facing the correct direction. So it's going to be right side facing down. So right sides to the other exterior, and sorry, I cannot talk today. The zipper will be sandwiched between. And then again, I'm really taking my time to clip and move the pull out of the way. I can't stress enough how important that is, especially when we get to the top zipper. It's one of the things that could contribute to a wavy zipper. All right, so now I'm going to take it to the machine, and I am going to use my zipper foot and stitch along the regular stitch length along this right hand side. Okay, again, while I'm at the machine, we have just stitched at the given seam allowance on the right hand side. We are going to fold open the exterior and the lining piece, so that way they are wrong sides together. And again, just like I did on the left hand side, I am pulling them so they are nice and snug. And we are going to top stitch again along this side here, the right hand side. I'm turning it around just because my Teflon foot has a thinner side to the right, and I used that. And so again, we're going to top stitch along here at I'm using my largest stitch length. All right, so we have just top stitched along the right hand side. So your front should look like this with your two exterior pieces, your zipper pointing up. Your back side, you should have your linings with the right side facing up. So now we need to take our lining piece A. And this is the piece that I was talking about in the beginning that could be kind of confusing. So this piece becomes the lining for our exterior pocket. So you are going to go ahead and set it right on top. Mine matches up literally perfectly. If yours is a little bit off, you don't want to trim the back lining. If your top part is a little bit longer, you can trim the edges, but we need to have it the same size as this lining. You don't want it smaller than the lining because it could be thrown off. But there's enough room in the pattern depending on the materials you use. Mine's kind of thick, so it matched up perfectly. If I'm using like a cotton woven, then sometimes I have to trim my top panel because it doesn't take as much in the crease. And so now what I'm doing is I'm putting it right side up on top of the lining right side up. And I'm just going to put some clips, and we are going to base stitch all the way around. This is where you definitely want to double check that you have your zipper pull on and going in the correct direction, because we are base stitching all the way around, and that would stink to not have it there. The other thing that you want to check to make sure that you did everything correctly before you base stitch around, just kind of open up your pocket a little bit, and if you look, you should see that you have the lining, the correct side of the lining on your left, on the right, and on the back. And that's how you'll know that you did it correctly. And I accidentally pulled my zipper all the way off, so I'm just going to flip it. So now we're just going to take it to the machine and base stitch to hold this in place. All right, so we have just base stitched all the way around. If you want, just double check your panel again if you didn't do it before, because once we attach everything, it'd be really a pain to have to undo. So this is now our built exterior front pocket, and we need an exterior J and K piece. So for the bottom here, when it's done, we want it to look like this. So we are putting our exterior piece, accent piece, right sides together and clipping along the bottom. If it's helpful, you can mark the centers and match from the center out. Mine line up or almost perfectly. There's a little bit on that side. So I didn't mark the center. And I put both the bottom and the top piece on at the same time. So we have our exterior piece J. It's going to look like this. So we are putting it right sides together, and the curve we want facing down. So the flat side should line up perfectly. Okay, so I'm going to take this to the machine and sew along at the given seam allowance along the top and the bottom. And just to double check, you want your cutouts facing up and your curve facing down. Okay, so I have just stitched along the top and the bottom. It does get pretty bulky near the zippers, and especially because I'm using 2 layers of vinyl. When I do this with water resistant canvas or cotton, it definitely makes it thinner. So now what we're going to do is we are going to top stitch. So for the top piece, we are folding it open and our seam allowance is going to be facing up. So if you look behind, our seam allowance is going to be facing up. And for the bottom, we are putting our seam allowance down. So they are going opposite ways. And so I'm going to top stitch that. Another thing is if you look here on the back, it does get kind of thick. One of the testers that for me actually put a little slice here and put her zipper tape not zipper tape, sorry, her vinyl open, butterflied it open, so it's not quite as bulky. So that's what you could do if you wanted to cut within the seam allowance a little piece to keep that open just on the end. It makes it not so bulky here. My machine will be able to handle it, but that's just a suggestion if you are worried about the thickness on yours. We have just finished up our exterior front panel. I just did the top stitching. I did hand crank it over the zipper because it does get thick there. So this is what it looks like from the front. This is what it looks like from the back. If you have to use Decovil, you'll have it on all 3 pieces. But I'm pretty happy with the structure of the vinyl. So I'm going to set this to the side. And now we are going to build our slip pocket, our exterior slip pocket. So you need your exterior piece E and your lining. If you want to put rivets or a snap on the back, I have placed 3 pieces of Decovil Light to give it a little bit more structure. You could run a strip across here. But if you plan on adding anything that's going to pull on it, I would add some interfacing to help beef that up. So now what we're going to do is this is our exterior and this is our lining. We're going to put them right sides together. You want to make sure that your exterior, if it's directional, is facing the correct way because we're not sewing all 4 sides. We are going to leave the bottom open. We're not going to sew that. So I'm going to clip this and then take it to the machine and sew along the left, the top, and the right hand side at the given seam allowance. Alright, so I have just sewed around all 3 sides of my exterior slip pocket. The first thing I'm going to do is cut my corners at a diagonal. That is going to help turn this right side together. And then I'm also going to trim the seam allowance down. I find that also helps this turn a little bit better. Right, and then once you have it trimmed, you are going to turn it so it is right sides facing out. Mine's a little bit stiff because I'm using the vinyl and the water resistant canvas. So you definitely just want to be gentle. And if you have like a tool or something to poke out the corners, that is really helpful. I just use a chopstick here. So I'm going to take my time and really poke this out off camera, just so I'm not wasting time here. And I might add it, if you're having trouble, I'm going to put a little bit of heat with a blow dryer to really help turn these corners so I'm not struggling so much. Alright, so I have turned my slip pocket right sides out. The bottom is still open. If you are using a material that can be pressed, I highly recommend that to get nice, crisp edges. And I am really happy with how this looks. I'm using vinyl, so I just use hair clips to kind of hold it in place. And I'm really happy with the corners. Cutting that diagonal really helps to make those nice clean corners. So now I'm going to take it to the machine and I'm going to do a row of top stitching along the top. Normally I do about 1/8 inch from the edge, but I'm going to do this one at 1/4 inch because I want to add rivets to the top and I want to leave enough room for those rivets. So I'm going to go only across the top stitching. Okay, so I have finished up top stitching across the top of my slip pocket panel, and now we need our other main panel piece A, and I have marked the centers, and I tried using chalk on here to draw a line, and I can kind of see it, but it definitely doesn't show up on camera. So I have these clips marked where my center is slightly to the right. So you're going to match the center of your pocket piece with the center of your main panel and clip it into place. And I'm only clipping along the bottom. You can see how this is kind of puffy. So what we're going to do is we are going to stitch down the left side and the right side. So I'm going to put it in the machine like this and backstitch at the beginning and the end. Make sure you're backstitching really good. And I'm going all the way up just because I want this to be secure. It might get tugged on. And then after that, I'm going to sew up in the center, but I'll show you that before I do the next step. Okay, so I have just sewed along the right hand side and the left hand side of the slip pocket. So now I want to divide mine. So I'm going to take my ruler, and the chalk was not showing up. So I tested this silver marking pen, and it will come off of this vinyl. So definitely test it on a piece first. So I am just drawing my line, marking the center. You can kind of see, I guess, in the light where it is. So what I'm going to do is sew basically a box. I'm going to sew an 1/8 of an inch up one side, cross where my top stitching is here, and then come down the other side, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Alright, so now we have a top stitch, we have our pocket secured, we have our center box stitched. I took off the silver line, and now I do want to add some rivets here. So you can measure in or wherever looks good for you. Honestly, I just eyeball it. So for the center one, I'm going to do it within my top stitching here and between the lines of the box. So I'm just using my best judgment, centering it. I'm going to do the same for both edges. All right, so I have, you can see on the right-hand side where the top stitching goes up, I have centered it to the left. And then the same thing over here, I did it to the right and the center. So I have these rose gold rivets, which have really long posts. So I haven't really used them much, but I think this, because with the vinyl, it's super thick, that they'll work. And actually, if you look on the back, there's still quite a bit sticking out. So if you have the same problem, you can add some leftover material to bulk this up. So I'm going to grab some scrap water resistant or waterproof canvas to put behind here to fill in that gap. Okay, so off camera, I have folded some water resistant canvas or waterproof canvas multiple times and used the hand punch to punch a hole. So now I'm going to put the cap on, and I have this cam snaps press. So the actual press I got from Cam Snaps, but the dies I actually bought off of Amazon. And it looks great. So that extra little bit of water resistant canvas really bulked it up enough that I could add these rivets. I'm going to take the last one. All right, so now we have our 3 rivets. You can also add a snap or a Chicago screw, whatever you prefer for your pocket. All right, so we have just finished our pocket. We have added our rivets to the top. So now we are going to put our exterior accent pieces on the same exact way. So this bottom was already open for the pocket, so this is going to seal it up for us. So I'm just going to clip these on, and I'm going to probably do the rest on time lapse because it's the same exact process. The only thing that I would say is for this top piece, when you do the seam allowance, it is kind of close to the rivet. So if you have a skinnier foot, that may be helpful to get as close as possible. Like it's within the seam allowance, but it could change the height, I guess you could say. So just something to be mindful of. I notice it's not a biggest deal if I am using water resistant canvas, but it is if I'm using vinyl. I have just top stitched along the bottom of the bag. So again, this is not like a mandatory step. I'll let you know where to or when to sew this in the construction process if you do not want to top stitch down here. So like I said, it does make the top stitching near the zippers difficult. So now I'm going to put this to the side because we are going to build our interior pieces before we put it all together. All right, so now we're building our interior lining pieces. So I'm going to start with the slip pocket. You need your piece G. I am using vinyl for one, and then the lining. So in the pattern, I have it written. So we put right sides together, you sew left, bottom, right, flip it inside out. So it would look like this. And then you are putting your trim along the top. So like the top would be open and you are adding the trim piece. But because I decided to do vinyl, I'm not going to use the trim. I am going to just leave it as is and probably add some rivets. So what I'm going to do is clip it, and I'm going to sew around all four sides, but I'm going to leave a turning hole in the bottom here so I could turn this right sides out. So that way it will give me a finished top part. Okay, so I'm going to take it to the machine and stitch, leaving that turning hole. If you are using the trim, you only need to do the left, the bottom, and the right hand side. Okay, so I have just sewed around the interior slip pocket. So I am going to cut the corners at an angle and trim down my seam allowance before turning this right side out. It will just help it turn better. And because I'm using vinyl, it's going to be kind of thick. So I'm definitely going to take my time and make sure I poke out the corners. Turned my interior slip pocket right sides out. Because I'm using vinyl, I left the bottom open. If you're not using vinyl, you should have the top not sewn. That should be open. So if you're not using vinyl, this is where you will add your slip pocket trim. So you would mark the center, put double-sided tape, add this here, fold it down onto itself, and top stitch. But because I'm already using vinyl for the exterior, it would just look silly with vinyl over it. So what I'm going to do is take this to the machine and top stitch across the top. And I'm going to do it at a 1/4 inch instead of an 1/8 inch because I want to leave room for rivets as well. So now I've just top stitched across the top. So if you are using the trim, you should have that done as well. If you have the trim, your bottom is already sewed together. But if you're doing it like me, we need to align this edge. So I just usually put my fingers in both sides at the edge and kind of pull it apart to help it close evenly. And what I'm doing is, oh, and you can see this corner is not completely poked out. So let me fix that because once I sew this on, I can't adjust it. So there we go. And I'm just using a chopstick to kind of go into the corner, run along the seam, make sure it's really poked out. Okay, much better. So now I'm sticking my fingers in again and turning the sides together. The seam allowance usually balances out pretty good. And if you look from the side, I can kind of see my lining a little bit more. So I'm going to adjust the vinyl part pull it out a tiny bit because I really don't want to see that lining if I can help it. Okay. And I'm pretty happy with where it is. I'm not going to sew it yet because it's going to get sewed closed when we attach it to the bag or the lining piece. So I'm just putting hair clips on to hold it in place because I'm really happy with the alignment of it right now. So the next thing is you will need a lining piece. And I'm just folding it in half to find my centers. You could use a ruler. I just find this is the quickest, easiest way. And I have my silver marking pen, and I'm just marking the centers on the top and the bottom. And it's in the seam allowance, so you will not see those marks. And then now you are going to take a ruler, and you can measure up. You can measure down about 3 inches from our center mark, or measure up about 4 inches from our bottom mark. Okay, so I grabbed my ruler, and I'm actually using the bottom mark. Originally I had used the top, and then one of the ladies testing for me was like, oh, I did it from the bottom. And I was like, oh, that makes it so much easier because our bottom edge is straight where the top has the curve. So it's much easier to line up your ruler. So then the other thing you need to do is find the center of your pocket. So again, I'm just folding mine to find the center. And I'm going to mark just a very... Actually, let me use chalk. Chalk should stick on this. That way it will come off. And so in case this shifts, I have that mark that I can use to line up. So what I usually do is keep it pinched, line it up on that center, and make sure the bottom of my ruler is straight because I want my pocket straight. And now this is where it gets a little bit tricky because we have to sew this on, and I don't want to put pins through it because that will perforate the vinyl or the waterproof canvas. So I'm actually grabbing some tape off to the side here. And I'm just going to use a little bit of Scotch tape just to hold it in place. And then so we're going to take this to the machine, and we are going to stitch around all 3 sides. So leaving the top open, I'm going to start on the right, come across down the bottom, and then back up this left-hand side. And make sure that you are backstitching at the beginning and the end very secure to hold this slip pocket in place. Alright, so we have just stitched around all 3 sides of our pocket. If you did it the way that I did with the opening, we have stitched it closed on the bottom. And then our top is open, and I just made sure to backstitch very securely at the top. And I'm going to add some rivets here. I'm probably going to do that off camera just because I showed you already before how I added the rivets. So I'm going to do that the same way, and I'm going to put it right here on the inside of that stitching instead of the outside because I feel like it'll be too close to the edge. Okay, and just to show real quick, I have added the rivets to my pocket. I'm not splitting it down the middle. If that's something you wanted to do, you definitely could. And on the back, I used the extra waterproof canvas to supply support for the rivets. So now we can set this to the side and start on our zipper pocket. So now I have my other short zipper and my 2 zipper pocket lining pieces. So I am going to take my zipper and put it, this is the right side of the waterproof canvas. And again, I have my zipper cut slightly longer. I'm going to clip it in place so my lining is right sides up and my zipper tape is right sides up with the teeth facing towards the top. So once I do this, I am going to go to the machine and base stitch it along the top here and still moving my pole out of the way so I don't get that bubble. Okay, so I have just stitched this on and I'm at my machine still, and I've grabbed my other zipper pocket lining. So now what you're going to do is you're going to fold this zipper so it's open, and you are going to attach it to the other zipper lining. So again, this zipper lining is right side facing up, and you want your zipper teeth facing up. And so we're just attaching to this other edge, and I'm lining up the sides of my pocket first since my zipper tape is a bit longer. And we are going to do the same exact thing. We are going to base stitch it in place along the top. And you'll know you're doing it correctly because your lining for your zipper pockets are both right sides facing together. All right, so we have just finished putting our zipper, attaching it to the 2 lining pieces. And I'm going to set this aside because we are going to prep our lining and the zipper pocket overlay. So I have a vinyl piece cut out here. And so what I'm going to do first is fold it in half and mark my centers on the back. That way it's just easier to line up after. And I am going to take my double-sided tape, and my machine hates double-sided tape, so what I'm doing is I'm putting it right in the center of each long side, and then that way it will not be in my top stitch lines. This is a 1/4 inch tape. You could if you have 1/8, that would be even better because it's skinnier. So now what we're going to do is we are going to stick this about 2 inches down from the top, which is also, I measured, it's about 9.5 inches up from the bottom. So what I do is I already have marked my centers. It's a little bit hard to see because it's in the silver marking pen. So what I do is I just have my center lined up, and then to make sure it's straight, I'm checking the sides to make sure that they are touching the same exact place. What I'm also going to do is measure that 9.5 up from the bottom, just to show you it's easier from the bottom because, again, like the other with the slip pocket, it is straight. So you can see here it's a little bit. Also, I'm going to go by the bottom one, and what I'm going to do is peel off the back side of the double-sided tape. And sometimes I peel off the top first or the bottom and then, but I'm just doing both. And this one's very sticky. Okay, and so I want to make sure I have my frogs facing the correct way, so the mushrooms are facing up. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of flipping. I can see where my mark is and aligning that with the center of my ruler. And so I'm placing and sticking my bottom side first. And once that's stuck, just smoothing out the top. And then you can use your ruler and check the sides, double check to make sure it's centered. This would not be the first time that I have not centered this correctly. All right, so I have just stuck on my zipper overlay. What I'm going to do now is take it to the machine, and I am going to top stitch around only the outer edge, not the inner edge yet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my needle, like hand crank it in, and I'm not going to backstitch because I'm going to tie my threads to the back. So I'm going to put my needle down and go all the way around and stop and start in the same exact hole I begin with. You don't want to backstitch if you want to tie your threads to the back. If you backstitch, that's fine. It makes it quicker or easier for you. That's okay too, but I'm going to show you how I tie my threads back. All right, so now that we have cut out our center square, we are going to take the zipper pocket that we just worked on before the step, and you need to decide which way you want your pull to open. I like it opening left to right because I put my zipper pocket on like the back of the bag. So what I'm going to do is it's going to have to go behind here, and it's going to open up like this when we top stitch it. So it's a little bit tricky. But for right now, before I open it up, I'm going to put some double-sided tape, and I'm just putting it like on the very top and the very bottom of my zipper tape. And that way it will not be in my stitch, my new stitch line, but it's going to help me hold this in place. And even though I'm using the 1/4 inch, I actually have it like overhanging the edge a tiny bit. So you can see, if you look from the back side, see how it's not all the way on the zipper tape. So what we're going to do is we need to, before I pull off the tape, we need to center this in the back. So you want to make sure that your pockets are on centered evenly. I usually eyeball it, but we're gonna have to zip our pockets closed or stitch our pockets closed. So you need enough on each side to be able to stitch them. So once you have an idea, then I pull off my tape. Which, because it's not on the zipper tape completely, it's a little bit of a pain. So what I did is I actually just did the bottom one. So I'm going to do the bottom first and then do the top. So I'm making sure it's lined up in the back where I have enough space. I'm going to flip it to the front so I can make sure you can see that the teeth in the front are not really lined up. So I'm going to center this from the front. And it wants to push up against you. So I'm just resisting it and placing it down, trying to evenly get it. So I'm trying to center my zipper teeth between each short edge. And it can take a little while. Like, this is really tedious. Like, I don't like doing this part at all. But it's worth it in the long run. I think it makes your zipper pocket look very nice. Okay, I might fiddle with this a little bit more off camera just to get it exactly how I like it. Okay, so I had to really maneuver it to get it how I like it. But now that I have the bottom, I still have to unstick this top part. But for me, that part is easier because this is laying more flat. So once you get one side, the second side is much easier to stick down. So if we're looking at it from right side up, now it is stuck centered how I want it. And what I need to do is on the back here, we're going to take this to the machine and top stitch around the inner box. But if I do that with my lining down, I am going to sew my pocket closed. So what I need to do is open up my lining. So that way, if I am looking at this from the right side up, this pocket is sticking out the top. So now this will stitch it open. We won't sew up our pocket. And I'm going to take it to the machine and I'm going to top stitch all the way around the center box. And I'm going to do the same thing to tie off the threads. I'm not going to backstitch. The machine, I have started and stopped in the same spot. I just happen to do it on the side because I feel like it hides where the thread is. So I'm just pulling up on this, and it's giving me a little bit of trouble. So I might have to thread through from the front with a needle. So like I said earlier, this sometimes happens when you start and stop in the same spot. So I'm gonna try it one more. Alright, so I grabbed a needle. I have just threaded it on, and now I am putting it back in the same exact spot where I started. And then, so now that I have all four threads to the back again, I can tie them off like I did previously. And again, I'm not burning off the knot. I don't want this to come unraveled. You could probably use some fray check or like a tiny dab of glue as well, if that would help you feel better about the knot staying in place. So again, I just trim it down nice and short, and we look through the front. we have our top stitching, and you cannot tell where it began or ended. Okay, so if I'm looking at it from the front, I now have my zipper pocket lining facing down. And what I'm going to do is we are going to leave our bottom open because we're going to close our bag. We're going to turn our bag through the bottom of the lining and then use the pocket to seal it up. So what I'm going to do is I have this folded back, and I am just going to stitch down the right hand side and the left hand side of the bag. And on the bottom, I'm actually going to sew. You can see that this is a little bit longer because of how we folded it. So if you want to trim it first so you can see, I'm also going to sew about, I don't know, 1/2 inch to 1 inch on each side. Just that will help me close up my pocket later on. All right, so I have just stitched down on the sides of my interior zipper pocket. And you can see I've come a little bit on the inside along the bottom, and I've trimmed my other zipper lining so they're equal. So we have this opening, and again, that's so we can sew up the lining after and leave like a clean edge. If you have cut your zipper tape longer, you could trim this down. I honestly usually leave it because you don't notice it in the bag, and I feel like giving that extra is less likely to fray. And the last thing I would recommend is just open your zipper and make sure that your pocket is actually correct, that you didn't accidentally sew it closed, like you didn't forget to turn up that other lining, because you definitely don't want to discover later on that you can't open up your pocket. So once you have it all done, you can set it to the side, and we're going to prep our top zipper. Okay, so now we are prepping our top zipper. It's the longest one, and I have put my pull on. I want to make sure my edges are very straight, and so my pull is going this way up. So at the top, I have marked on the right and left hand side the measurement in the pattern, and that is because we are going to turn our zipper at a 90-degree angle. So there's a few different ways. Some people do it as they're sewing and turn it. Some people like fold it down like to the edge and then fold it back. The way I'm doing it is my preference. Sometimes I feel like some of the other ways get this weird ripple in the zipper tape. So this is my preference, but if you have another way to do it, that works too. So I'm opening my zipper tape up at that mark. And I've marked it only in the seam allowance because even though this is water soluble, it doesn't really come out of polyester really well. So I'm going to fold it down at that mark. So the wrong sides of my zipper tape are back to back, and my teeth are straight down. So after I have that pinched, I'm then going to turn the teeth at that 90-degree angle. So my zipper tape, where that mark is right below the zipper teeth. And then I'm going to clip it in place. So on the back, it looks like this little triangle here. And on the front, it has a nice clean line. It doesn't have like a weird V here or anything. So you can do both sides at once. That's what I do. But I used to do it one at a time while I got used to it. Because we are going to take this to the machine and just like stitch back and forth in the seam allowance to hold it in place. What you need to be mindful of is this V. If you start too far at the bottom and your needle doesn't catch, it's not in this triangle, this will completely open up on you. So what I tend to do is go to the machine, put this under the presser foot, put the needle down through this corner, and then put my presser foot down. But you could do whatever works best for you. And I'm going to do both sides at once. So again, I'm folding it on that mark, so it's back to back, and then folding the zipper teeth out at a 90-degree angle. And again, clipping in place. So I'm going, and then I do this first to just make sure that they are even, because sometimes you don't measure exactly correct. So make sure you're happy and they look even. and then take it to the machine and tack it down on both sides. All right, so I have tacked this down in place on both sides. So now on this side, we need to add our zipper tab. If you're doing the 4-fold method, make sure you're using a thin fabric like water-resistant canvas or cotton woven. I'm using vinyl, so I'm only folding mine in half, and I'm going to leave this raw edge. Just like you could, if you wanted to put edge coat on this, you could. I feel like you don't really see it, or it's not that super noticeable. Same thing with the zipper overlay, but you could definitely always edge coat. So then I'm going to put the zipper in, and I'm going to center it so it's flat. And then I'm going to clip it in place, and I'm going to bring it to the machine and top stitch both along the left-hand side and the right-hand side. I like doing both sides because I feel like it holds the zipper better. Sometimes if you only do one, it's much easier for the zipper to fray out. So once you have that folded, you're going to take it to the machine and top stitch along both sides. All right, so we have just finished up our zipper. I have marked my centers. This time I've done it with a silver marking pen because it doesn't bleed as much. And I already have the centers of my lining. And now I've marked the centers of my exterior. Now in the pattern, I have us starting with the front of the bag and with our zipper tape going opening from left to right. But my zipper foot is thicker on one side. And because I have stitched the bottom, it makes it really difficult if I start with the front. So I'm going to start with the back. So you're going to follow the same steps. The only thing that you want to be mindful of is which way your zipper is facing. So because I'm starting with the back, I want my zipper with the opening here to the right. And what I'm going to do is line up the center of my zipper with the center of my exterior and right sides together. So my zipper teeth are down and I am clipping all the way along the edge of the zipper. And I didn't trim this yet. I prefer to trim mine after everything is sewn in. So if you want to trim your zipper tape equal with the edge, I definitely recommend if you do that, use a lighter so it doesn't fray. And again, because of this curve, it's really easy to get a wavy zipper here. So it's really important that you take your time and clip everything, move that zipper pull out of the way, and you don't want to tug. I have it in the pattern where you can baste it first. Some of my testers did both the exterior and interior, like sewing at the same time. And so again, on this side, you can see this overhangs a little bit. That's fine. I'm just lining it up for now. And so we are going to base stitch this in place from the left-hand side to the right. If I'm looking at this a little bit here, there's a little bit more of an opening on this side. I might not have actually hit the center perfectly. So I'm going to just double check my measurements. You want to make sure that you have the same amount showing on each side, especially on this zipper or the zipper tab side, because that is the harder side to turn later on. So once you have it centered like you want, go ahead and bring it to the machine and base stitch along the top. All right, so I have now just base stitched my zipper on. If you want to open this zipper up, you can if it makes it easier. So now I need to put my lining, because I started with the back, I want my lining that is going to go against the back of the bag. So I want my zipper pocket. I tend to put my zipper pocket on the same side as my slip pocket and vice versa for the front. So now I'm going to put it right sides together, the lining and the exterior. So the zipper is like sandwiched in between, and you can line up the centers, but I also check to make sure like the tops of my bag also line up. Okay, and then I'm going to start clipping at the center and working my way out. Again, moving that zipper pull out of the way. It's so important to do that. Like I said, there's two things that are really hard about this bag. This top zipper, because it can become wavy, and then when we put the D-rings in. Okay. So once you get that clipped, now the other important thing is you are going to sew it using a zipper foot, and I'm going to sew it from the exterior side because my zipper foot works better on this. It gets stuck to the water resistant canvas. So you are going to sew at the given seam allowance starting from the top here. You're not going across this straight edge. You are going to start giving in a little bit and then coming all the way around the arch. But if you sew all the way across the top, you are going to not be able to put your straps in. So make sure that you're only going the given seam allowance into that edge there. All right, so I have just stitched on at the given seam allowance using my zipper foot. So you can see that my stitch length goes a decent amount in to that top part, but it's still open on the edges. And again, that's really important because that's where our D-ring is going to be inserted. So now this is where it gets tricky if you've sewed your bottom. So now we're gonna, I trimmed my zipper tape and the tab. If you haven't done that, you want to do that and maybe use a lighter so it doesn't fray. So now we're folding it back onto itself so we can top stitch. And you might find it easier to open up your zipper tape for this. So you can do that at any point. And I'm taking my time. If you're using vinyl, you really want to take your time, maybe clip it to help hold it in place. Actually, these hair clips probably work better because, yeah, they're longer. If you're using like a cotton woven, definitely iron this because this is also where it can get a little bit caught, and then you have like a ripple inside. And again, this is where the zipper can go wavy on you. So I'm just really taking my time as I'm sewing. I'm not really tugging on anything, because anytime you pull it, you give it a chance to cause a bump or a wave. So now this is the other important part. We're going to top stitch this now, only starting at the end of our zipper tab and stopping at the beginning of the teeth. You do not want to go all the way up that curve. If you do that, your ends are going to look, they're not going to come out clean. So you want to top stitch starting at the zipper tab, ending at the zipper teeth. I have stitched along, just trimming my tab, and now I'm folding it back as if I was going to top stitch. So this is where it becomes difficult because you have the bottom sewn. What I have found that works for me and my machine is to turn this so that the exterior is right side out. And depending on, sorry, the camera's getting hit, but depending on your materials, it could be pretty thick. Okay. So here we are, we're at the front where we have not top stitched. Okay. So I find it easiest because the way my presser foot is, I need to have this along the right hand side because the left hand side is thicker. So this is what works for me, having it right side out. And again, I'm taking my time slipping this, making sure, because I don't want my zipper to be wavy, or try to avoid it as much as possible. And again, we're only top stitching to the from the start of the zipper tape to the edge of the zipper tab. So again, I'm going to show you at the machine how I maneuver it. All right, so if you are sewing on a domestic where you can remove and have like an arm, I definitely recommend that. So I'm sewing this with this underneath for like outside of it. If you do not have that option, what you could do is sew it like this. So as you're sewing along, you're kind of moving the right hand side out of the way. And again, I'm going to backstitch at the beginning and the end, making sure not to tug on my zipper tape as I'm going along, because that will cause a ripple. And I'm just going slow, taking my time. I am using my right hand to make sure that my lining at least feels straight. I try not to get any creases in it, but without being able to see the lining, it could be very difficult. And you'll see that I'm readjusting often. And as I'm readjusting, I'm trying to leave my needle down. Sometimes I forget to do that, but it helps. Okay, and then this is where it's getting a little bit more tricky, and I'm going to actually turn the bag almost so it's like right sides facing in. I know it's really hard to see, it's the camera, but this way I can get close to that zipper pull, or the zipper tab at the end. My zipper pull is also down that way too. and it's like I'm almost like curving this over my machine. Kathy from K-Dill Handmade described it as sewing in a long dark tunnel. That is kind of accurate. So if you did not sew your bottoms together, you should not have this problem. And it's kind of a pain, but once you get used to it, to me, it's worth it to have that nice looking bottom of the bag. And I'm almost at the edge. I'm just moving my zipper pull out of the way. All right. Okay, so I have just finished top stitching this side. It came out pretty good, except for right here. I definitely moved the bag without having my needle down, so it's just not quite as straight. And the other thing is, I guess I didn't smooth out right here. But it's really, like, I actually think it looks worse on camera than it does in person. And because this is in vinyl, I'm not going to pick this out because I won't be able to fix any of the perforated holes. And once this is like right side together, this is like so close to the zipper tab, you're not going to see it or notice it in the bag. So now what we need to do is we already have our bottom right sides together. If you did not already have it, this is where we're going to sew them up. So we'll start with the exterior side. So I am matching up where my accent pieces are first. So I'm lining up the bottom so the seams match up there. And then the same thing with the top. And they are kind of thick. So just be very mindful. And you can see here how the bag is kind of like the lining is flopping out. This is why we do one side at a time. We also are not stitching across this. So some bags have you stitch across. We're not doing that. We're going to put our D-rings in there almost like a box corner. So again, I'm going to line up the other side right here real quick. And then we're going to take it to the machine and we are going to stitch along the left and right hand side, closing up the exterior sides at the given seam allowance in the pattern. And what I am going to do is, because they're kind of thick, I'm going to do a second row of stitching inside the seam allowance. So I'm going to do the full seam allowance and then a second row, which will help so it doesn't pull so much on the vinyl. I have done the sides. You can see where my seam allowance gets wider, have the bottoms with the opening. So now we need to box the corners, and I'm doing it the same exact way, except on this, I'm not doing the double row of stitching. It's just the liner with the waterproof canvas. So it doesn't need that double row on the sides or on the box corners. Now, the only difference between these and our exterior box corners is we are going to use that larger seam allowance in the pattern. And again, that's so the corners fit more snug. So again, I'm going to take it to the machine and sew at that larger seam allowance. And you'll also notice I'm using my Teflon foot. If you have trouble with your waterproof canvas with the PVC side sticking, the Teflon foot helps immensely. Alright, so I have just boxed my corners at the bottom. And now for the lining, I do trim it down. I do trim it down to about 1/4 inch. Especially because we didn't trim the exterior. And the only thing I don't trim is all the way up at this top part here. And that's just so when we put our D-rings in, it's easier to open up the seams. So I go maybe a couple inches from the top. And I don't stress about it looking pretty or perfect, because no one's going to see this unless your bag busts open, which hopefully does not happen. All right, so now that we have this, we are going to be putting our D-rings in. So now we need to prep them. Okay, if you are using fabric, you can do the 4-fold method. I am just going to use webbing. It's thin, it's easy. And instead of D-rings, I'm using square rings. They both work. So if I had smaller rivets, I would probably just rivet here. But I do not, and I'd have to bulk this up so much. So I am just going to stitch a line as close as possible to the bottom of the square ring or D-ring across the webbing, just so this doesn't flip around. All right, so we have our D-rings prepped. Now this is probably either the hardest or second hardest part of the bag after top stitching. So we are inserting our D-rings here, just like as if we were doing a box bottom. So on the side that has your zipper opening, it's going to be really easy because that zipper opens wide. So the same idea, I have my lining, in this case it's up, my exterior toward the bottom, and I'm sticking my fingers in, and I'm lining up the seams. So the seam of the exterior to the seam of the lining. And I prefer to butterfly mine open. And so now I'm going to insert my D-ring here. So it's just like a box corner, except we're sticking our D-ring in. And you can put it as far down as you want. Just remember, we're going to have to stitch across. So I leave a little bit hanging out just to give myself some leeway, even though I burned the edges, just in case it wants to fray. So I'm clipping on both sides. And then now I'm going to take it to the machine and I'm going to sew at the given seam allowance. You can go a little bit thicker of a seam allowance. The most important part is, see this stitching here that ends from where we stitch the top of our panels? We want to make sure that our new stitch is cutting across that stitch here, because if not, we're gonna see like raw edges. So I'm gonna take it to the machine and sew across at the given seam allowance. And like I said, I have my sides butterflied open, and this side opens pretty wide, so it shouldn't be too difficult. All right, and I'm also going to stitch it not in time lapse, so that way you can see. And the other thing I forgot to mention is you want your D-ring tabs, like the connector, to be centered over that seam. And so I'm trying to smush down the bag as flat as possible. It's a little bit awkward. You might have to, maneuver or whatnot to get at the curve. And make sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end. And I'm just smooshing this out of the way so I can sew as straight as possible. If you want to give an extra backstitch over the D-ring connector, you can. Just, that is where our strap is going. So you can see I have stitched across. It touches the seam over here. If you want, you could do a second row of stitching just to be sure that you are securing that strap connector in. This is kind of a large bag, so you might overload it. All right, so we have just put our D-ring tab in on the side where our zipper tape opens. So now we have the D-ring tab side, the zipper tab side, and this is where it gets very difficult. It makes it hard difficult because that tab makes it so you cannot open it up as wide. So I'm still opening up my seams to match up the center. It's also so awkward with the way I have the camera right now. Okay. So I'm still doing this and butterflying my seams open. It's just a much smaller space to work with. And what's really important is, again, these stitches on the side here, you need to make sure that you are catching them in your seam allowance. Okay, so once I have it mostly centered, I'm putting my D-ring tab inside. If this space is too small, you could always come up from the inside of your bag. The other thing that you want to keep in mind is you want to put your D-ring on the side that has your exterior fabric. It can make it a little bit difficult if it's on the lining side. It makes it hard when you are turning the bag. The D-ring can sometimes get stuck where the zipper tab is. So you can see, again, I'm like wrangling this one. Besides the top stitching, this is the hardest part. And once I have it mostly centered, I'm going to clip it and take it to the machine, and I'm going to do the same exact thing as I did on the opposite side. I'm going to stitch across, making sure that I'm catching these side seams. Okay, so I have also just put 2 lines of stitching across, and I'm pretty sure I have caught the edge. So now we're going to turn it right side out, and our zipper should be open inside. So I'm just reaching in and gently turning this. Definitely take your time. You don't want to pull and like bust open any of your seams. It's a little bit tricky because I'm using all vinyl for the exterior. It's a little bit easier when I'm use water resistant canvas. And I'm trying to turn it while it's on the table so you can see, but I might have to do it while it's on my lap. I find that's a little bit easier for me to turn it that way. Yeah, all right, so I'm gonna do the rest off camera. All right, so I just finished turning the bag out. It honestly took me probably at least 5 minutes, which is why I turn it through the bottom lining instead of having us turn it through the zipper pocket, because I couldn't even imagine doing that. So I'm pretty happy with how it looks. The edges are pretty lined up. The bottom looks great. So here's our back side and then the front side. And when you zip it up, you can see here are our D-rings. Some of my testers put some top stitching here. It's definitely super thick and my machine wouldn't do it, but if you have an industrial, that might be something that you'd want to do. And this D-ring, that's why I had said we put it against the exterior, because then it comes up along that side. Otherwise, sometimes it gets stuck down in here, this tab, and it's very difficult to get it through. And I'm pretty happy the zipper isn't really wavy at all. So everything looks great on the outside. So if everything is looking good how you want it, and you don't want to make any corrections, before I do the strap, we are going to sew up our pocket in here. So how we do that is we are going to open up our zipper pocket, which we left the lining open, and I'm going to stick my hand inside the main bag and pull up the lining. I'll show you once I get it through. I'm sticking my hand through the zipper to the zipper pocket to pull the lining of the main bag up and through. So what I'm pulling out here is my bottom lining of the main bag. And you can see where I have already stitched the side. It might be a little bit long, like on a curve, because the bottom is much wider than our zipper pocket area. So I'm just going to clip along that and then take it to the machine, and we are sewing our bottom lining closed, just matching up our stitch from the left to the right. And that is that wider stitch length that we, or not stitch length, the wider seam allowance that we took. So this will close up our bottom pocket. So definitely make sure you have everything like poked out as you want it, especially the bottom corners and then up near our strap connectors. Okay, so I didn't realize that I filmed that in time lapse and not regular. So I just pulled my lining back down out of the zipper pocket and pressed it so it is sitting flat and into the corners. And then the next step is to pull up our, well, once you have this poked out where you're happy with it, because once we seal up this pocket, we can no longer reach inside the inside of our bag. So again, double check that you have everything poked out how you want it. And then we're going to take our zipper pocket lining, and we have sewed a little bit from left to right. So what I do is I poke out those corners first as best that I can. I don't worry about them being so perfect because it's inside. But then again, I take my fingers, pull gently so I don't bust the seam, but that way it folds in. And then I'm going to clip this close. and then I'll take this to the machine and stitch across, and I try to go as close to the edge as possible to seal up this zipper pocket. All right, so I have just stitched up my seam as close to the edge. So now I'm going to tuck that pocket back inside. This is why I don't worry about poking the corners out so much, because we're just poking them back the other way to sit. All right. So now I'm going to show you how to do the strap. But before I show you how to make it, I'm going to show you how I measure it. So here's our bag closed, because this is I designed as a shoulder bag. I do put them with snap hooks, but you could just put your strap on each end of the D-ring. So what you're going to do first is I'm going to pretend this is like my strap, and I'm turning it under. So I'm going to have it clipped. I'm not going to double fold my strap, so you want to take that into consideration. You also want to take into consideration, like I said, if you are going to use snap hooks. So I'm going to clip this side to hold it, and then I'm going to take my other side and loop it through the strap hook. So it's like, I mean, the D-ring. So it's like I'm making a strap, and I'm gonna change the camera so you can see how I use this to measure. Okay, so I'm gonna show you how I use my measuring tape to decide my strap length. So I've already hooked this on here and folded it back about 2 inches, pretending that would be the edge of my strap or the snap hook. And so I have now looped this other side through the other D-ring. So I have the strap here, and then this edge of the measuring tape that moves. So what I do is I put it over my shoulder, and I can pull up on this measuring tape or loosen it, and I can see where I like my bag. So for example, I like mine right where like my elbow connects. So I'm holding that measuring tape in place, and then I can come over here and see, like if I flip to the back, it's about 26 inches. So I actually cut my strap to 25 inches because I am also adding snap hooks on. So that's going to add another 2.75 inches or so to each side. So this is a way that you can figure out how to get an accurate strap length for you using the measuring tape. All right, so now that we have figured out the length of our strap, we are going to start building it. So I'm using the vinyl, and I am going to use webbing. If you are using vinyl and cotton woven or anything else, you want to draw the center down your strap piece. And I am going to put double-sided tape because we're not doing the 4-fold method. We are only folding it to the center. So if I put double-sided tape along that center line, it will be out of my seam allowance. So I find this easiest. It just holds it right there for me. Now, if you are using a strap or a material that frays, you probably want to fold your edges in. I have vinyl, and so I am not using anything that frays. The vinyl and webbing are going to be fine, and I'm using a strap end, so it will be covered. But if you're not using strap ends, you definitely want to turn this in. So what I'm going to do now is take off the tape and fold both sides. Actually, I'll do one side at a time. Fold both sides to that center line. finish up our strap. This is what it looks like on the top. The back side has the webbing. I really love how it looks. And now you have to decide how you want to attach it. I like using snap hooks because if I ever want to make this purse a crossbody, or if someone who's like taller than me, I can change out the strap. So you can use a snap hook, or if it's for you and you know for sure your size, you can attach it directly to your D-ring. And then you could either stitch across or rivet here. And the same thing if you're using a snap hook. I am going to use rivets to hold it. It's when I fold this back, it's so thick that I'm afraid trying to sew through that, my machine would not be happy. Okay, so I'm going to measure to see how far back I have folded this. So from my snap hook to, it's about 1 inch. And so I am just putting some clips here. And then I have this cute little tool from Kayla from Carolina Little Stitches. And I am going to use it to mark my rivet marks, my rivet holes. And I'm going to use 2 rivets to hold my strap. I haven't decided if I'm going to do side by side or one on top of the other. If I do one on top of the other, I probably have to, I'm going to make this a little bit longer because I'm also going to use strap ends. And if I want to put those strap ends on, I need to be able to fold this back a little bit. And I'm worried that if I put the strap ends on first, that I will scratch them doing the rivets. All right, so let me see. I'm going to... Yeah, so now this is about 1.25 inches. That gives me a little bit more wiggle room. So I'm going to use this tool to mark and punch my rivets, just like I did for the rest of the bag. I'm going to do that part off camera since I've already showed how I do rivets. For this one, though, it's so thick, I don't need to add any extra padding or anything. So either rivet, Chicago screws, or sew a line across to hold your strap in place. Okay, so I have just attached 2 rivets. I did them vertical. And now our last step, it is optional. If this is a raw edge, you could always edge paint it, or you could fold it under if it was cotton woven. I am going to add the strap ends, and I put it so the right side is facing out, even though this side is going to be facing down, against your body. You're not really going to see it. But if you flip the strap over, you still want it to look nice. So I have centered it on. If you want to put some glue inside, you can. With the vinyl, this fits so tight that I'm not worried about it. And then I'm bending back my strap so I can see the little holes. And then I have this tiny magnetic screwdriver. I have a kit. It came with different bits, and then I actually got it at Micro Center. It's for like working on electronics, but it works perfect for these tiny screws. So once I have it centered, I don't pre-punch these holes, and I am just screwing it all the way in. These screws are kind of long. There's some shorter ones that might not hold quite as well, and that one you definitely might want to use glue if that's the kind that you have, but these are fitting in perfect. The hardest part is just lining them up with the hole because they're so tiny. I have chubby fingers. All right, so that side is all done, and I'm going to repeat it for this other side here. All right, so I have just finished adding the strap ends to both edges of the strap. And so now, last step, just attaching it to the bag. And it is all done. Alright, so we have just finished up the Addy shoulder bag. I really hope you loved the tutorial. I check out my Facebook group because, like I said, I've made it in a variety of materials. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I hope you love the pattern. I hope you love learning some new techniques for putting in the strap connectors on the side. And as always, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. Every little bit helps my channel grow, and I appreciate it so much. Enjoy. Bye.